It looks like we've got a couple of people here. I'm sure more will file in, as is usually the case. If you're watching this live, as in real time, not on the repeat, please tell me if you can hear me and if you can see me okay. I have a long history of audio and video issues. So while I'm waiting for that, the topic of the conversation today is sort of a after action report overview of Area 419's large rifle scope review. I don't like to do these things behind people's backs, so I reached out to Craig from Area 419. He's been here before, you guys have seen him, to see if he wants to join me and we can have a discussion, because this is not really meant as a, well, criticism, yeah, but constructive criticism, if that makes sense. And since I know Craig well enough to know he's a sane adult, I figured it's safe enough to bring him on and just have a discussion.
We'll take sane adult. We'll take that with a grain of salt, but I'll try to be
Sane adult by my standards, right? Okay.
tallest midget. Here we are.
Yeah. You can clear that bar in street shoes just fine. No, it's the thing is right. So I'm pissed about your review, right? I'm pissed about one thing and one thing only.
All right, let's go.
You know me, and you didn't tell me you were doing this. You didn't ask before.
So this review, I'll kind of take it all the way back to the beginning. Lots of new optics have come.
Yes.
There's a lot of excitement around them. Mm-hmm. The reason for it, though, is we're making our scope mount, and we're like, hey, scope mount videos are, while cool when we shoot at them and things like that, they only go so far. So let's just talk optics in general. And since we have these mounts, we're going to start stocking optics again. We've got some Kala stuff in. I've got red dots and lasers because we got a new product coming in a couple weeks around that. And we'll have various optics from 6 or 8 brands by the end of Q2 here.
Oh, very cool.
So we were going to do this test anyway, internally on our own, because we, going through a real what matters type test and what do we actually like, because we're dudes, we're shooters, and Zach in the shop, he bought a tangent when he felt like he had to have a tangent, so it's super cool. And John bought a Zico, and I've always been a Collis guy, and Nathan's got a Night Force and a Vortex, and we had all of these. Everybody's got their own. Well, I think this is the best. We're like, sweet, whip them out. Let's see, let's measure, and we decided to go after it. And I do feel bad that I didn't say, hey, here's exactly what we're doing, Yulia. But here we go again. And we're going to do it again. And I think this discussion is largely around the next one or the one after, and how do we make them better? And when we got into this, as you well know, doing these tests is one thing, and then showing these tests to the outside world is another thing altogether. And this was, looking at, everybody likes product reviews. We're dudes. We like toys. We like stuff.
Oh, yeah.
How can we take some things, some best practices that we found in other review conversation industry, and take things that we learned from the laser range finding binocular video and tie that into something that touches on this emerging wave of 35 to 40 power tactical scopes that, and for reasons that I'm sure we'll talk about, didn't really exist in a short period of time ago.
Correct. Most of these are new, and like I said, one of lessons learned on some of the. My only real critique of the methods will come to when we talk about optical analysis, and it's going to sound a little vain and arrogant, but you'll forgive me. The fact that you guys don't know this is normal. This is not what you do for a living. And the fact that I know this is also normal, because that is what I do for a living. I run a company that makes rifle scope testers, among other things. That's what I do for a living. Overall, the review is extremely well done.
Thank you.
And I really like the fact that a good-sized company is behind this, because you guys have resources that all the individual YouTubers don't, right? And you also have interest in doing this correctly, which most of the YouTubers with resources don't. Right there, I have seen big channels try to do a review of an optic, and it's well produced, certifiable horseshit. because they're basically either they are infomercials or it's some guy who's got his head so far up his ass with his own success that he has no interest in learning anything, right? And I'm sure you've seen plenty of these. So with what you guys did, it was actually a legitimate effort. You went through it, you broke attributes, which is the right way of doing this, and you didn't try to make it full objective. Making it full objective is impossible, and we'll talk
It
about
is,
that
and that was
in a minute.
a huge challenge.
Yeah, you cannot make it full objective.
Can't be
So
done.
one of the things you did that I really like, and because remember, so I've done a bunch of these, right, and everyone is a little bit different. And one of the things that I've learned over the years, it's much more important to explain the why than the what, if that makes sense. And this thing you guys did in the end, where you just sat down and discussed every scope and your impressions and your reasoning and where you think it stacks up more or less and things like that, that is actionable, right? For
Mm-hmm.
a consumer watching your video, lots of things are interesting, but most things are not super actionable. And when you guys sit down and you're all shooters, and at the end of all this, and you go and discuss what you found, what your take on this is, individual preference set, that is immediately actionable. For a guy looking to go buy a scope, but looking to drop $4,000 on a scope,
Right.
he's not looking to you just say, "Yay, Tangent is the best, Zico is the best." He's
That's
looking
silly.
for you
Nobody
to
gets anything
explain
out of
why.
that.
You'd be amazed at how often I make these long, ponderous videos, right? I like to talk. You'd be amazed at how often somebody will just roll up to me and go, "Oh, just tell me what to buy." I go, "No." Then if this is what you want, you're not my audience, right? Fairly
Yeah.
small, partly by intent because I refuse to dumb it down. My basic assumption is that I'm dealing with intelligent people who just don't know this particular branch of knowledge especially well, and that's where I can help, right?
Sure.
But I will not never dumb it down to deal with idiots, and you guys didn't either, which is good. I think that is really doing this.
But we really missed something apparently, and I want you to come right to it.
Hmm.
What because my intent in coming
Hmm.
on with you tonight and spending 60 or 90 or however many minutes we spend together and
Yeah.
like I'm at home tonight and if
Hmm.
by the way if anybody watching hears a kid run around or something and fuck
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
But we're going to do this again and then
Of
there are
course.
two that I want to do coming up. So the
Hmm.
first one, well, 2.5, and I'll start with the half. A an amazing number of comments asking for March and Schmidt and Bender, which I
Hmm.
totally hear and understand.
Yeah.
We have a great relationship with March. March announced, and we're working on. They need scope rings made and
Hmm.
mounts, and we're
Yep.
gonna make some for them. And they're gonna say
That's
Area
awesome.
419 on them, and they're gonna say
Hmm.
March, and it's gonna be a good deal for them.
Hmm.
And I've got one of their new optics that fits this mold. I think I got an email today that it should ship from them this week.
It's a 5
Um,
to 42, the PRS model with a writable turret.
yes, I believe
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Good. It's a nice scope.
And yeah, and then honestly, Schmidt and Bender, I was walking through SHOT Show
Hmm.
and some little Central European voice I hear yell at me, Craig, Craig. And I was like, yeah, look around. And it was somebody that's part of the Schmidt and Bender team. And he's like, hey, can I show you our new stuff? And I thought,
Hmm.
I didn't know necessarily that Schmidt and Bender was making new stuff. So cool. Schmidt and Bender's
Hmm.
um, Schmidt and Bender's presence in the U.S. tactical shooter, PRS, consumer market, etc., is obviously not what it was 10 years ago.
Hmm.
But they're still making cool things, and I've had a couple conversations with them, and we plan on doing kind of a half edition of March and Schmidt and Bender. Do they belong?
Yeah.
It's
Oh, perfect. Excellent.
it's YouTube. There have to be clickbait titles. It is
Yeah.
what it is. It's a game,
I,
but we
I'm,
can
I,
we can do
I'm
it
the last person
appropriately.
to ask how to make successful YouTube video, but the technical end that I can help with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to get those in and we'll
Hmm.
do something about them and life will be okay there. But the other two are, there's a little nuance to them.
Hmm.
One of them, we're looking at optics that live in that, I've had a conversation with Apex and their
Yeah.
premium product is like $2,200.
Hmm.
Down to there's a whole suite of stuff that exists between like
Correct.
$800 and $2,200. So we'll call
Hmm.
it from $1,000 to $2,000.
Hmm.
Can half price be just as good or something along those
Perfect. Yeah.
lines? and get into some of those optics. And for that one, we'll probably do stuff that tops out in that like 24, 25, 26 range, because
Yep.
we'll get into this high power stuff later, but I think that's probably more appropriate and fair for that class of product. And then the last one I want to do is one on hunting optics, and I talked to you about a little bit about this in email.
Yeah.
But it's such an impossibly hard scope to scope to scope test. I don't know that we will do it that way. Rather, it's not a secret. I've had a long-standing relationship with Collis and Swarovski, and I immediately hit up Swaro and said, "Hey guys, can we do this?" And immediately, here's Sundin 564 with another optic brand. We can't possibly talk about all of them, but in the hunting side, can we get a good, better, best, a low, medium, high grade optic from Swarovski, go through some 30 versus 34 millimeter tubes, 44 versus 50 versus 56 millimeter objectives, and it almost be a how to go about deciding what the right thing even is for you in the hunting optic world, because there are so stinking many. And the test that we just released, it's going to cross over 100,000 views like tomorrow, which is awesome.
Nice. That's awesome.
But if we can make a video better and it does 65,000 views in that time, I'm happier, because we find the most benefit. And Area 419, we're a business. We are not in this to simply make people feel better. It's
Correct.
to allow people to make informed buying decisions that we're on the other end of. That's the goal.
Yeah, and then buy them from you. That's perfect. Look, but
And
when
I
you
don't
guys,
care.
no, they should buy it from you. Look, when you guys put in the effort, I mean, the least you can do, if they buy a scope per recommendation, they should buy it from you. I have zero problems with this, because you carry multiple brands. You are or you will carry multiple brands. You are in a position to make a very fair assessment, because in the grand scheme of things, if somebody comes and buys a Collins from you or a Schmidt or a Tangent, you don't give a shit as long as they buy something from you.
Right.
So when I originally started doing reviews 20 years ago, SWFA, which is now very changed, they're the people who made it possible for me. Without their support, would not have been able to do it. They did not care what I recommend as long as they carry it. Right? This is all they cared about. And that's how I was able to start. So it's a perfectly understandable position. So let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Mr. Sundin says Minox ZP5. So Mr. Savage Hands, Richard from CS Tactical, you want to comment on why you guys don't do Minox anymore?
While he's doing that, I want to jump to G5 here, whoever that may be. It may be a common one here. He talks about the PM2 was excellent in the early 2000s. The High Master from March, obviously a well-known, well-renowned optic. But then the important part he gets into is coding tech continues to advance. I was fortunate enough. I actually went to Collis in Austria in September and got to spend a little time with their team. They were talking about the 540, obviously, because it was pre-released then, but we know about it. And we walked through how they make things and how they assemble them. And I'm a manufacturing nerd, I love it. And when they start handing you erector systems and parts, and they start handing you lenses and talking about where this lens comes from, and then it's coded here, and this one does this, and this is an intensely technological game. And I think that there's a conversation that is certainly relevant and appropriate. I'm a car guy. I think cars are cool. One day I'll buy myself something really slick, but Porsche 911s. I love a good Porsche. The base model, or like a 911S today, is faster than a 911 Turbo was 6, 7, 8 years ago. Cars get faster. Computers get faster. Televisions get bigger. This all advances. Optics are not immune from that. And for an optics company to stay relevant, they have to continue to invest and push. And you have to have one of the levers move one way. So Leupold with the Mark V, the 7 to 35 wasn't one that we were, specifically glowing about in this review. And that's okay. I think that if you want to buy a Mark V, the 5 to 25 is the better product there.
By far, yes.
Yeah. And, pushing the extra magnification range is maybe not appropriate for that optical system. But what they light up is this whole 35, 40 power on the top end line. It really only gets to exist now because good people like you and all the people that are figuring out how to make these optics better and better,
Hmm.
they continue to change the game, and it's really sick. I mean, I like thinking about the fact that as far as bolt guns and optics and reloading all this goes, we live in a very real,
Hmm.
is this a golden age that we sit and look back at? So I think that modernization
Yeah.
and evolution is important.
So for optomechanical rifle scopes, meaning conventional glass and mechanics rifle scopes, we are definitely at the golden age because the next evolutionary leap is already beginning to happen.
Yeah,
Better
it's electro.
electro-optical integration. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there, that that that's a long tangent that we're probably not gonna get on in a moment. So I will, before we get into the details, I want to say something about that comment by G5. He goes, coating tech continues to advance. It's not the coatings that. So coatings have been relatively commoditized for about 15, at least 15 years. 25 years coatings made a big. 25 years ago, coatings made a big difference. But then, very good anti-reflective coatings have became cheap and relatively commonplace and are very easy to get. Something that is very hard to communicate, and Craig alluded to it a little bit from your trip to Collis, is how complex the system is. What differentiates a $500 Chinese scope from a $4,000 Collis, Zico, whatever, pick one, doesn't matter, um, is not the coatings. Coatings will be a little bit better and the more expensive, pay a little more for them, but it's not a big difference anymore. The overall system design and the execution of the assembly make a huge difference, right? And when I say system design, is that no, my favorite question is that how many lens elements are in a rifle scope? I asked that all the shooters and hunters, and you obviously have a good idea, so I'm not going to torture Craig too much. I've never had anybody get anywhere near to the real number. How many did you see in the erector assembly in the new colors? Just the
Four
erector
five,
assembly.
4 5.
Uh,
Just in the magnification assembly that I
yeah,
sat.
yeah, just the erector assembly.
They handed me one of the magnification assemblies, and I just sit there. And you obviously know you turn it,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's a helix design, and
yeah. It's a
you got a lens on each side, and then it moves inside them. And
it's a three-part helicoid, right? Typically, like between 6 and 8 lenses, just in that. A
you're
well
right. So
designed,
one of these new optics, is it? What are we looking at? 15, 18 lenses in one of these
at
guys?
least, and many of them
Yeah,
more, right?
yeah. It's
It's,
crazy. People have no
it's
clue.
people have no clue. They are seriously. I have a diagram of the Hensoldt Photo 16 from 20 years ago. They tried to make it a little bit shorter. The objective lens assembly alone was 8 lenses, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So imagine this: you have 16 very, very precisely made optical elements. Somebody had to come up with a design, define them, order the pieces. They need to be perfectly shaped. The surface quality has to be spectacular. There are no scratch dig. Then that gets coated, usually third party. Swarovski does, Opta does their own. Most of these go to third parties, that people who specialize in this. Then all these coated lens elements get back to whoever is going to be assembling this. In the meantime, all the mechanical fixtures that hold all these things in place get machined with spectacular precision, right? And somebody has to assemble it and align it and test it as we go along, etc. With optical systems, to maintain very good wavefront quality, you oftentimes have to line them up in place to 100 nanometer positional accuracy, oftentimes less. In my world, less. We do other things, right? Nanometers is not a lot, right? It's less than the wavelength of light that we're looking at. That's why when you're trying to figure out the positioning of all this stuff, you use interferometric optical methods. So system design and system assembly and alignment make arguably the biggest difference in the modern world. As a system, riflescopes have gotten incredibly more complex. Coatings did not change that much. System design, availability of weird shapes, aspherical shapes, or freeform shapes, etc., changed everything.
So you may be able to tell me this, and I'm curious in the middle of this conversation. The Leopold Mark IV, the one from early 2000s, it had
Yeah.
the mill dot with the MOAs,
Yeah.
the MOA turrets. How many
Mm-hmm.
how many lenses were in that optic compared to the new Zico?
So I've never taken it apart. Not a lot of them. Leopold always used relatively simple objectives. So, and the erector ratio was not very high, so the erector was simpler. The eyepiece was probably 4 lenses. The objective probably for the side focus model 1, 2, probably another 4, 6 in the object. So 12 to 14 lenses, probably.
But we're still probably 50% greater.
We are significantly greater. So the moment
Yeah.
we started doing high erector ratios, everything got more complicated. Partly because everything steamrolls. The way this erector ratio business works, and March pioneered that. March started the high magnification ratio stuff. So let me see if I can visualize this, or maybe I can sketch it. So here's. Do you mind if I do a little bit of sketching?
Yeah, of course. And while you're at it, I saw a question earlier I wanted to get to. Let's see.
So
Somebody, where'd they go? Oh, Jared asked, what is Area 419's closest competitor? It's a big market out there in a lot of these games. We consistently understand that our greatest competitor is any version of complacency that seeps into the things that we do on a daily basis. And, this is being on this with Ilya. This is a response to, we could have taken and like, hey, this video was successful. Let's figure out how to do it in a way that's both easier and catchier and might get more YouTube views and whatever. That's bullshit complacence. And that's our number one competitor. If we are going to lose to anyone, we're going to lose to ourselves. As long as we have the 35, 6, 7 people we have at Area 419 are absolute studs from soup to nuts, top to bottom. We consider our team one of the best that you could possibly assemble to do what we're doing. But just like any great organization, if we get lazy, we lose. Our competition is our own complacency. So that is our closest and only competitor. The market's very large. Other companies make parts that compete with the parts that we make. Cool, good for them. I hope they grow. The market is incredibly large for good products, but our competitor is ourselves.
Okay, very cool. Okay, Richard, I'll send you a link to log in. Let me finish with this sketch, and I'll let you in a moment. Richard from CS Tactical is trying to hop up. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, I talked to him often.
Yeah, I yelled to him earlier today, so I think he's just coming back for more.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so an objective of a rifle scope creates an image in the front focal plane. It's basically an image circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what happens when you are on low magnification. The erector system looks at most of this image, something about this big. So this is what is picked up by the erector system, and then it gets massaged, flipped around, and then your eyepiece spits it out to your eye. When you are on high magnification, you're taking a small center portion of this, okay? Right? And that gets magnified, and that's what happens when you're on high power, on high magnification, right? If you have a scope with a magnification ratio of 4, that means the diameter of this is going to be 4 times bigger than the diameter of this. I hope you guys can see it well enough. If you have a magnification ratio of 8, you are sampling the tiny little thing in there, right? And when you blow it up, it still has to be optically perfect, or the Riflescope company is going to get yelled at. So the objective systems had to get seriously more complicated to maintain an incredible level of detail, because now you're blowing up this tiny little piece in the image. So the moment we went to these high erector ratio, it got seriously more complicated. Okay, and there are many ways to do this that also required shorter focal lengths and a variety of other things.
And I don't mean to trigger you and send you down a rabbit hole, but there's also the idea that many people say an optic goes from one power to another, and well in reality that it often does not. 5 to 25 is often really just 6 to 24 that's been rebranded, because sometimes 4 is much easier than 5. And this really happens with LPVOs. A true 1x LPVO is a difficult thing to do.
Well, not anymore. Now there is so many of them. So, it's been resolved, partly because true 1x is one of the few things we can see. Like if you're looking through a scope, you don't know if it's 2 power, 2.5 power, so they can lie easily.
Yeah, but you can 1x and know.
True 1x we can figure out very, very, very quickly. Now, lots of people get it wrong for other reasons, but again, that's a long page. If you want to talk low power variables, That's a whole different lecture.
Another one.
I made a
Another
whole
night.
video on why they have small objectives because people kept on trying to demand 1 to 6 scopes with a 50 millimeter objective, and that just ain't gonna work. There are good optical reasons. Okay, so let me invite Richard real quick. Let me send him the login link, and then we'll continue. I do want to go back to your review and point out a couple of things that you really
Jared
need
asks
to know.
again if precision is common, which precision is common is I'm not going to take that on its face as the case. Precision is more common than it used to be, or more achievable than it used to be. But he says, what's more important, design or materials? I think that if you really want to be good, you need to understand your materials and then design against them in a manner that can be done in a precise way. Precision is not some, here is this thing, do it precisely. Precision, or a really well-made product, is a culmination of good design and good materials understanding and good process understanding. Design things that can be made exceptionally precise, and shockingly, you'll produce a more precise product.
Well, again, this is your wheelhouse, but I'll still jump in and introduce a couple
Please.
So the shooting market with mounts and rifle accessories, etc., is full of well-designed products. It's not nearly as full of well-engineered products.
Fair.
Because it's not the same thing, right?
Correct.
Okay, product well-designed and well-engineered, you need somebody who understands manufacturing, understands materials, and understands the applications. Okay. I've seen very few Area 419 products. Like, I got introduced into this because of the mounts, because I started doing an overview of the mounts, and they all suck in a variety of creative ways. And a friend of mine goes, "Oh, you should look at Area 419." So I looked at Area 419, and that is a seriously good mount. So that's the whole thing started. Right? I have limited exposure to your products. I've seen a few. The one I've seen they're well designed. They are well engineered. There is very little for me to take apart, and that's an unusual thing. I can crap over everything if I'm so inclined.
I'll be careful what I send you then. I'm kidding.
Once again, like, you're a civilized adult. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but it is what it is. Oh, here's an interesting question. That leads me to actually my next comment, so let's talk about that. Joe M. What makes Leopold 5-25 better than the 7-35? Design, right? So here's what happens. When you have a particular product family, they use similar overall designs, but they're not all the same. And you don't always easily guess which one is better than others. The best example of it was when Vortex introduced PST Gen 1 riflescopes quite a few years ago. There were some growing pains and all that, but once the line settled, depending on which one you got completely different take on it. 6-24 was quite good, and 2.5-10 was quite good. 4-16A and 2.5-10 was dog shit. And I told them that, and they didn't talk to me for like 6 months. Then they got over it. They are not. Sometimes it clicks together. These are not all fully independent designs, and it just clicks together better, some magnifications than others. With the Mark V line, the 5-25 of the ones I've seen is the cherry of the line. 3.6-18 is good for what it is, but they had to make it very short for a military contract. That makes things very complicated with optics. Making things short in optics is hard. And when they did the 7-35, it did not click together nearly as well. I have some ideas, but I have a suspicion that they basically released the 7-35 without redesigning enough for high power.
Yeah. Well, and it's my understanding, and you can obviously tell me I'm wrong, and I will believe you. As you go into higher and higher power, your bar for what's required of the optical system obviously increases.
Correct. What's required of the objective lens system specifically.
Yeah, so you're asking more of the optic, and if you can't continue to give it more and feed it more, whether you're constrained by something inherent in the design or materials or some budget or price or whatever it is,
okay.
It can get goofy. Oh,
hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, hello, Richard.
Hey, it's the first time doing this. I haven't done any of the or use this iPad, and I haven't done this type of format. So just bear with me. I'll do what I can, and hopefully I don't have too many people call while I'm on the live stream. So,
No,
but
no worries.
yeah,
Well, I do this every 2 weeks, so welcome to hop on anytime.
yeah,
So,
right on.
anyhow, Mr. G5 goes PST2, seems to have a sweet spot in the 3 to 15. Correct. That's the cherry of the PST Gen 2 line.
I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
PST Gen 2, we're talking about Vortex,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Like there's several scopes, right? And they're all pretty decent, but the 3 to 15 punches way above its weight class. That's the cherry of the product line. And once again, and you don't always know which model is going to be which. But going to high magnification puts extra emphasis on what to do with the objective lens system. Tangent, when they did a 7 to 35, they didn't take a 5 to 25 and stretch it. No, it's a completely new scope, nothing in common. Optical design, new mechanical design, new everything. So it's not going up in magnification is not as simple. When Night Force released 7 to 35, yeah, it's called an attacker also, but it doesn't have a ton in common with a 5 to 25 attacker. And it's a much better scope than a 5 to 25.
Yep.
With the attacker line, 7 to 35 and the 4 to 16 by 42 are the best ones of the line. And the 5 to 25, comparatively speaking, is not nearly as good. 7 to 35 is excellent, right? So you the same approach, system design, etc., does not necessarily lend itself to different magnification ranges equally well, if that makes sense. So, okay, so we were okay. So that gets me actually to one of the critiques, Craig, of what you did with the optical testing.
Yeah.
You did a ton of comparisons. You primarily did it on high magnification.
Yes.
And not only is that, so there are two reasons why that is a mistake. One is that the highest magnification from a shooting standpoint, unless you're doing F-class, is the one you're going to use the least.
Sure.
Okay, that's problem number one.
Yep.
Problem number two is that the way optical system, variable power optical systems are optimized. So for, what's a good way of thinking about it? So for each magnification level, each setting, there is this maximum theoretical performance, right? When you're trying to optimize the system at a particular magnification, you're trying to get as close to the maximum theoretical performance as possible. You cannot perfectly optimize it at every magnification. So the manufacturer chooses, okay, we're going to put the bulk of our effort in making it as perfect as possible at this particular power, and everything else we'll try to make it better, but we know it's not going to be as good.
All right. So I totally hear this, and I totally understand this. Let's go through this list. Let's say, Tangent optimizes for 26 power, and Collis optimizes for 30 power, and Night Force optimizes for 22 power. You get where I'm going with this.
Yeah. So you have to do
How do you do it? Okay.
These two magnifications, right? So the one I do it, remember, I did 8 of these already, right? I'm working on number 9. I basically do several side by sides of different magnifications. Okay. That is the unfortunate truth, and let me mute Richard for now while he is. There we go. That's better. Okay. That is the unfortunate truth of it. And there are plenty of examples. One of the last big comparisons I did with big scopes, one of them was Steiner M7XI. It's a 4 to 28 by 56. It's generally a pretty nice scope, except every M7 scopes, for reasons I don't particularly like, craps out for the top 20% of the magnification range. So it's absolutely for the best in the world, up to about 23, 24, and from 24 to 27, there's deterioration. They know it, just how the design worked out. Okay.
All right. So our take on this was if we did all of them at the maximum power that they shared, that would be the most difficult place for those optics to be excellent. Therefore, finding differences between them would be more possible. That was purely our thought process here. Because if they were all...
Sorry, you froze for a moment, so I didn't hear that sentence. Could you repeat?
So if we got to the maximum shared magnification, which was 35 among this group, that would be the place that it was most difficult for the optics to all be excellent. Therefore, it would be easier to find differentiation. So one of the things that we knew was the case. These optics are all really good, mostly really good. And picking out differences between them at, let's say we back them all down to 27 power, pick a number, would have started to teeter on the point of absolute impossibility. It would have started becoming really exceptionally difficult. But as you crank them up, you make it a little more difficult, and we start to find an opportunity to maybe, if they're gonna not be great, because these optics are all great, but if they're gonna not be great, it's going to be at the extreme. So the tangent, one thing that we noticed about it was barrel distortion all the way at the top. So in that lens chart, you got the vertical lines, and there was just a touch of barrel distortion all the way at the top. Does that exist at 25? I don't know. But if something starts to, like you talk about that Steiner product, you say it's an excellent product until it gets to the upper end of its magnification range.
Correct.
Is it really then an excellent product? And if somebody's buying a 7, I thought you said 4 to 28, maybe.
Correct. Yeah.
If it's only actually good from 4 to 24, then are you really buying an excellent 4 to 28 optic? And so this is where, we wanted to draw a line somewhere. We could have made this video 6 hours long and done everything, but then at that point it stops probably being a very consumable product. That maximum shared number. It's really, this is having to make a content choice. Your channel, I'm grateful that it exists because it is pure, it's raw science. If your video needs to be an hour and a half to knock out one optic, you're going to do it. And sweet.
Like, I don't give a shit. Yeah.
Right. I'm grateful that we're in a time where all of that can exist. But when we had to start making editorial choices of, we have to not only publish this thing and people be interested in watching it, but we also have to produce this thing. And we're already, you start getting into, while we do have a lot of resource, and I'm very grateful that we are the size that we are of an organization, we can do this stuff. It's also then not unlimited. We still have we're not just in the business of making YouTube videos. We've got a business to run.
So good comment, but you're making essentially identical at mid power magnification. That's not correct. They're not. And you can see the differences. A scope can be worse. If you do put two scopes side by side, one can be better than the other at 35, but worse at 15.
Yeah.
It's
one of the remedies
visible.
One of the remedies that we have for this, and we hear this loud and clear, is that lens chart test that we did over time, and it's not going to be instant all at once, and it's going to be Richard sending us a pile of optics over time. We're going to continue to add to that library at different magnifications as well as the goal.
Good.
So, we've got 35 started with a handful of optics. There's probably also a number like 20 that makes sense to do. And if you have a number that you want us to do, Ilya, you can pick those numbers. But, I'm also interested in 20, and then probably at like 8, 8 might be another good number. And that can catch some LPVOs. And if the LPVOs need to have some of them an asterisk that says 6, and we'll obviously, they're basically set up. The first one, we could shoot 70 yards near, it's maybe 65, 70 yards inside the building onto that chart. And then as we go to the 25 power, we'll move it up, so that we continue to get some difficulty there. But that's our plan for that.
It's a good plan. Depending what you do for precision, guys, you really just need 2 magnifications, something in the 15 to 20 range, and the high. If you want to extend it to other things, you need the third.
Yeah, LPVOs and things like that are also. We have intent to continue down this path because again, we're making cantilever mounts for LPVOs and like the 2 to 10 class and all those things.
Apparently my microphone was off. So, but part of the reason why I wanted to participate this, because I do like what the effort that you put in, but as you saw in the hide, between Bill Glassaholic and Ilya, there's other areas that was kind of missed. One of the things I want to know about the blind testing, did everyone have the diopter adjusted to their eye?
So here's how we did it. And again, this was part of the trying to stay blind thing. Nathan, Zach, and I, the three people that spent the most time in part of this test, Nathan and I have glasses. We were not going to tune these to ourselves. We tuned them to Zach, and then Nathan and I got behind them and looked through them and said, do we believe these are going to be really close for everyone? And we made that choice that, we looked through them, we thought they were good, or at least close good. We didn't think that while any individual could have adjusted diopter a little bit for any one of them, across the line, we did not think that any individual product was going to be disproportionately poorly affected by everyone using a diopter setting that's set for Zach, who's got, quality 20, like good unaided vision. So each individual optic could have probably scored for each individual person a shadow better. But as long as, we came to the conclusion, and I'm happy to be wrong here, that as long as everybody's looking through the same thing, that gives us a pretty level playing field. So we did not adjust the diopter for all of them, but we also didn't adjust the diopter for any of them.
Okay, yeah. So they all react to autofocus diopter differently. The biggest problem with that approach is not really with the diopter; it's with the user. One of the guys, I don't remember the name, actually said this later when you were talking about this. I don't remember who. I'm not very good with names. And he basically said, "Oh yeah, when you first glance at them, they all look great, and then as you start staring at them for a little bit, you start seeing the differences." The basic problem is that if your eyepiece is not adjusted, the biggest difference you're seeing is that your eye gets fatigued, and you start, and a lot of what you start seeing, you don't know if it's the scope of your eye. Yeah. And the catch is that because every eyepiece is designed a little bit differently, the way you're gonna get fatigued and what you're gonna see in there is gonna be a little bit different. Again, it doesn't invalidate anything, but it makes the comparative differences a little bit harder, right? So you stare, you have three eyepieces that are slightly out of focus, right, for you, and you stare 10 minutes in one scope, 10 minutes in another. The sequence in which you've been doing it's going to matter because you're already tired. How your eye is going to react to it is going to matter. And it's amazing the number of different visual artifacts your brain is just going to invent when it's tired.
Yeah,
that's one of the. Unfortunately, I don't have an elegant way to solve it because, as you correctly pointed out, if you start marking with the eyepiece every time, it's a pain in the ass. But unfortunately, if you've been staring at a Riflescope for 15 minutes where the eyepiece is not set up for your eye, I guarantee you're seeing all sorts of shit that's not there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Zach making that comment, he and Nathan and I, probably the three of us, we spent more time staring through these than the testers did, obviously, because it was what was required of us for this, and honestly, we just wanted to. When a tester would sit down in the blind test, we made sure they had a chair, and they're basically, we set them all up on a big welding table. It's shown in the video, and look over across at the range, and they can just slide on a rolling chair back and forth. The average tester took about 20 minutes to get through the 7 of them. And, that was quite some time. I don't know how much of that is going to turn into artifacts because of visual fatigue. Certainly some of it, your eyes going to.
That's the problem. We just don't know. We just don't know how much.
Right.
Because
it's one of those.
Sequence matters and all that.
Yeah.
It makes it very undefined. Another comment you made earlier about barrel distortion and the tangent. What camera did you use to look through the scope?
A7 R4 with a 2470 GM2 lens. So when we set up the lens,
all right, okay, that's not good. Okay.
Okay, well, tell us what to use. So when we set up,
you can't set it up. You can kind of get it going. Unfortunately, with the larger cameras, this actually gets harder. So
it's using something with like a micro four thirds, a smaller sensor?
Maybe something smaller and smaller lens. So what happens is that in order to, most of the barrel distortion you saw, it's possible, let's say, it's also very possible that the camera introduced. So the exit pupil of the Riflescope needs to be incident, not on the entrance pupil of the lens, but on essentially onto a effective stop where the aperture ring is in the lens, which is deep in the lens for large lenses.
So we had a very when we set this up. So the way that we went about the camera setup is all of the nice thing about them being our mounts is we can control everything we wanted to. We set all of the optics, first of all, the optical center, and the very workmanlike way we did that is we took them all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom, and then halfway back up, right? Maybe some other way somebody wants to do it, but that's going to get us very, very, very close. We then took the height off of a fixed point on the table of the center line of the optic, and then the center line of the sensor on the camera, and built a fixture to make them bang on. We then had, so the plate that the camera was on was sitting on a flat plate that we could, in line, take and move back and forth to find the correct alignment, like you're talking about, of the focus of the optic in the camera. We figured out we needed to shoot this thing at an aperture of, I want to say we were around f4.
And what focal length were you on?
I can ask. Bryce is excellent. He would tell you I know it was a shorter focal length.
So the apparent field of view of all these rifle scopes is 20 to 30 degrees. 30 degrees on the colors, that's the widest. So if I were you, I would go find, if you want to continue using that camera, I would go find a prime lens of some sort with a focal length. Gives you field of view of, I don't know, 35 degrees. You can easily calculate it. Ballpark, just a little bit wider.
I want to say we were on, so we use that 24 to 70 zoom lens because it's our sharpest lens. The new GMTs are ultra sharp. And we were on the very short end of that.
Yeah.
Because really this was, and again, I'm happy for someone to say, no, you should have done exactly this. But what we did is
it's going to make things
a huge amount of Well, there's a huge amount of time just figuring out, okay, what exactly gives us the best image possible? Like, our goal was for those images to be as good as possible.
Well, that's the part, as I told you earlier, where I'm truly irritated. When you were setting this up, you could have called and asked. I would have told you.
I know.
It's not, and again, none of this is foolproof. And you guys, in terms of fiction, you're doing everything right. Just like couple of little tweaks here and there to make it a little bit more sane, because in the prime lens, the limiting aperture is not buried as deep. It's much easier to set it up within the eye relief. And also, if you miss the position so slightly, you're not going to be introducing as much stuff as you would with a zoom lens. Again, zoom lens, million elements, they're all moving and all sorts of stuff. So what you want a prime lens, preferably prime lens that is not optically stabilized, or where you can turn off stabilization and fix it in place.
Oh yeah, all that was turned off. We were in full manual focus so that we could control and keep things and track them and write down. Everything was where it needed to be for consistency. So, yeah, I mean, the good news is when we do the next one, whether you or, I mean, we've had people from the optical companies too say, well, I wish you would have done this. I'm like, sure. We'll fold in what we can.
Like I said, I'm also commenting just how to set it up better moving forward.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And we want that.
And one other thing, I think that's what you said in your follow-up that I thought I need to comment on. You're talking about the colors. You were saying it's too bright, where so bright that on your color chart you could not easily tell the difference between adjacent colors. Right? Was it you who said that, or
Zach said that? And
one of you said that.
Yeah, what he was talking about is when it was super bright during the day, he could distinguish small variations in like colors better in like a tangent or the Zico better than he could in the Collis, which was a brighter product.
So when your colors start blurring, when it's very bright, it's usually an indication of some sort of flare control issue, which I didn't think that model of the Collis had. But generally, like he said it as a good thing, that's not a good thing. If you're losing ability...
No, he didn't say it as a good thing. That was his knock on it. I think he was seeing it as
misunderstood it,
yeah, like a hue saturation issue more than a flaring issue.
Correct, but hue saturation implies it's a camera term, right? It implies a camera sensor or your eye doing something. In this case, your eye is not doing anything wrong. So how different optical systems render contrast makes a big difference. and that rendering is different in bright colors versus light colors. If you want to talk about saturation, so I brought this thing. So somewhere in my checkered past, I used to develop movie and video cameras.
Okay.
So I see all these glass charts. This camera is not going to render it well, right? The way you do this, right? See, it's backlit. See, all of this just disappeared, right?
Yeah.
So when it's off, you see it, right? I have an LED illumination pad behind it. So what you want to do with the charts, you only did the resolution chart. See what I have on the bottom here?
Color chart, it appears.
It's not a color chart. There are color charts. This is the Japanese. I used to work for a couple of Japanese companies doing cameras. But basically, they're putting all the different colors with words in there. And if you really want to be able to tell the difference between these, these color rendering or small color tones, stuff like that, is a huge deal. Especially with the fancy scopes, that is the kind of thing. And remember, I can do a backlight with different color temperature, right? Which will change the contrast a little bit. So you printed this huge chart and illuminated it. You are very suspect not to ambient illumination. But if you really want to do this correctly, you need to add some sort of a color chart. You need to add like soft light and harsh light, a couple of different illuminators to it, because different optical systems would react to it differently. In many ways, what separates the optical systems between the best of the best, and they're all very, very good. It is unquestionable. What separates them is the ability to render similar but not identical color tones apart under difficult conditions.
Well, and we did control color temperature.
Yeah.
Bryce picked a number, I think it was 4,000,
Yeah.
which is a nice neutral color temperature. And of course, we could have gone cooler, could have gone warmer.
Yeah.
And when that chart that we used, we found a good vector resolution chart, and then we did go, and it obviously was not as detailed as what you've got there, but added some color bars to it because we knew that was relevant. Yours is obviously better than ours, and is more.
But just
more detailed.
Yeah, there's a ton of standard color charts and all that. Just find one and pay somebody $50 to print it nicely. Yeah, but the small color tones are a big deal. Like, I used to tune movie cameras, right? So I have a very dubious owner. The company I worked for made image sensors that we went, and the cameras that won the very first time a Oscar for cinematography went to a digital camera. I tuned those 6 cameras for silicon imaging.
Awesome.
For Slumdog Millionaire. So I spent many weeks, and several other people did as well.
Is that with Ari?
No. So all the street scenes were done with silicon imaging.
Awesome.
Okay. Because it was small HD cameras and they were able to run. So we sent them image sensors. They sent the cameras back. I spent a ton of time tuning the image sensor, looking at the extended Macbeth chart. It has a ton of all the color tones. And then they came back 2 years later with an Oscar, which was very cool.
Awesome.
These charts
That's
exist.
cool.
You can buy them.
Yeah.
And you can use them. And being able to see color. So I always hear this, we're not photographers, we're not birders, we don't care about color. Color. That's how you see. And on top of it, color is what allows you to see better. Color rendering what allows you to see better in low light. Amazingly, if your optical system is able to carry more color to your eye, it will delay the transition of your eye into a scotopic vision mode where you start losing color perception. You'll retain ability to see well in low light much, much longer.
All right, question for you. Something we noticed during the test. Some optics have a coating that leans blue. Some have a coating that leans amber. Is this the color science being chosen by the optical designer on how they want warm versus cool?
When you say coating leans blue or amber, you're talking about the color cast of the image or the reflection from the coating?
The reflection from the coating. So we'd find it around the edge, or you know this. You spend enough time under high magnification looking at one of these, you can start to see the coatings.
There's a little bit of a bleed at the edge. It's not really the coatings so much. It's not the coatings you're seeing. It's how they control straight light is what you're seeing.
So what's the difference? We were confused by it.
So straight light is basically light that comes in off axis, and if it gets into the image, it will degrade the image fidelity. Usually it will degrade contrast, right? So different scopes, they have to baffle it in different ways. There are some small baffles. They're basically dark. Everything is dark inside the scope white to absorb all those spurious reflections. Like, why are anti-reflection coatings important? Everybody says, oh, it's to have the most light transmission to your eye. No, that's how much light actually gets to your eye is not super important. Your eye adjusts extremely well. What is really, really important is that as little as possible is reflected, right? Because if light gets in, reflects off of some surface inside, goes back, hits another surface, starts bouncing around. All these spurious reflections will also destroy image fidelity. When you are looking at the very edges of the image, where you have the edges of the lenses, sometimes you will have some of these stray light, some of the scrap leak through. Sometimes it will be kind of a yellowish outline a little bit, something bluish, etc. It comes down to how the system design overall manages color. The way color goes through lenses, different colors refract, change angle differently. A very, very big part of design is to control this. If you don't control it, you get a lot of chromatic aberrations, right? There are geometric, spherical aberrations, coma, astigmatism, and others, and there are chromatic aberrations. Chromatic aberrations are where different colors of light don't all go in the same direction. So what you are seeing on those edges is basically how they were managing color, not with the coatings, with the lens material shapes, number of lenses, etc. And at the very, very edges, it becomes very, very hard to manage because you don't have much to work with and it's already close to the mechanical fixtures and it's hard to baffle, though you kind of can a little bit. Okay, I'm going to touch my eyepiece again. It's falling out. One, two, three.
So,
Apparently, every
so
time I
when,
touch the eyepiece, my microphone cuts out.
so to touch on the chromatic
Mhm.
aberration, it's one of those things when because I didn't grow up with a long range background, and when I started helping out
Mhm.
Mike part time, and that's when Collis the 6 to 24, first around the first time that it was, or around the
Mhm.
time it was released. And so we have customers that complained about chromatic aberration.
Yes.
And and of course I was new and I was still learning. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. I was just like, what are they talking about? Right. And so once I once I saw it, I can't unsee it anymore. It's one of
Mhm.
those things where you it's probably better if you don't see it, but when you do, it's like, okay, now I can pick it up,
Yeah.
where and I can't not pick it up anymore. So,
So chromatic aberration degrades image quality. You see chromatic aberration, what you are thinking of are these fringes at the high contrast interfaces.
mhm.
But where you do not see it in the rest of the image, it actually degrades the image, right? So the fringes are just kind of a symptom where you recognize it the most, but it affects everything. And on top of it, the way a flare, basically spurious light, light's not supposed to be in the optical system, the way it is suppressed is also not quite the same for all of the different colors because they all refract a little bit differently, go to a slightly different spot, and things like that. Did that answer your question? Sort of, maybe, kind of.
Yeah, and part of my curiosity is why is some of it blue and why is some of it amber, and that's why I inappropriately thought that it was a coatings game because obviously you control the warmth or the coolness of light on the amber to blue spectrum. But
Yeah. So it's a coatings game when you are looking at the overall color cast of the image. Some of them look a little warmer, traditional European scopes. Some of them look a little bit cooler, a little bit bluer, traditionally European scopes. None of them have any very heavy color cast anymore. Everybody's kind of migrated toward neutral, but they're not all identical. But the stuff you see around the edges, that's not really the coatings.
all right,
Good. Is everything okay, Craig?
yeah. I just my kids are all around, and I let them know
Oh,
that we
all right.
talked about the tornado earlier. Grandma's okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I wanted to
exactly.
let them know.
That's why I'm asking. So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Richard just turned himself off. Okay. So that is that. Beyond that, like I said, other than the setup of the optical part of it, I don't have a ton to say. I have very mixed feelings about this library of raw images for a
Okay.
couple of reasons, and I don't have a good solution for this. Hold on a sec. This thing keeps on falling out of my ear. Even my ears are too fat, or the microphone is too fat. But a slight camera misalignment, a slight difference in the setup will make a big difference how the image is recorded. And then you are giving it to people in the raw format, which every display is going to render differently. So on one hand, it's a can of worms. On the other hand, I don't know how to solve it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm interested in having this conversation with you because you make videos about this stuff. You understand that you have to somehow show this to people, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of difficulty in that.
So I started copying out basically. So what I do through the scope videos, and I flat out say, don't look at the image quality. I'm doing this to show you the reticle because that
Okay.
is much more actionable to me in many ways. I try to line up the camera the best I can, but I stopped trying to get too academic with it, simply because it's just a huge time sink,
Yep.
and everything around it affects it so much that I just don't want to mess with it too much. But I do want to show people what the side picture looks like. And to me, this view of the side picture at different magnifications is a big deal, right?
And
Yeah,
I continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that's what we're looking to do is we're going to get the equipment so we can do more through the scope images. I just don't have the time. I don't have any free time, and now that we have some new people that are new employees that are working to help us in that area, so we can put it on our website through the scope, different magnification range that have the time to do that. Unfortunately, I don't. I have that request from customers all the time. I try to do it, but I don't have a real camera. I try it through the iPhone, through your smartphone, and it just drives me nuts. And so for the little bit of time I try to go out and get some shooting done, I'm sitting there jerking around trying to get these reticle pictures, and it's
Yeah.
It's
it's a
hard.
pain in the
It's
it's a
hard.
pain in the ass.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we were
Hey,
building custom fixturing, we custom heights in tracks, the whole thing to try to nail it,
yeah.
and it's
I I
just
I put
it's
together
tough.
fixturing using several nodal nails I got at Amazon, so it's not ideal, but it gets me close enough to show reticles, basically.
Yeah,
Look, if you want to automate all of this, I know a company that sells Riflescope testers. You can do MTF, all sorts of quantifiable analysis. It's a little bit expensive, but hey.
we're not all wealthy like you, Ilya. Now, we're gonna.
So
I
all jokes aside, hold on.
I want to have a specs conversation with you on playing with different sensors and cameras and
We can talk
lenses
about that
because
offline.
it's an
So
impossibly deep rabbit hole, but I'm interested in it.
very. Um, that having been said, so for my day job, I'm probably going to build myself a rifle scope tester, fairly full-featured one, something you can do thermals and day scopes, etc., just to use as a demo because in the market there's a good amount of interest.
Mhm.
If I build one and would do a demo, and I have a demo system in my office in Dallas, yeah, maybe we can do something. But I refuse to explain the exact technical results to the layman. I'll explain it to you, Craig, and then you can go proselytize that.
That's my job.
Yeah. Because I've tried to talk about technical metrics of how it works. Again, that's what I do for a living, and I run out of patience.
And I appreciate that you don't become frustrated with me by laymanizing as best I can a lot of these things. I think that
Not at all.
what we've really got going in the precision rifle community today is there's more access to
Hmm.
excellence and information today than there ever has been.
Correct.
The downside is there is not so much access to high level inherent knowledge by the individuals that are just becoming interested in this to
Hmm.
understand it. And it creates this dichotomy that it puts us in a tough spot. And I got thick skin. I don't give a shit. We'll keep going. But we make videos like the one that we released, and can it be better? Absolutely. Are we going to try to make them better? Absolutely. Um, but we're also going to continue to try to make things that are consumable
Yes.
so that it can matter. And this is
Hmm.
all, it's a funnel. In the sales
Hmm.
funnel, you have your initial leads all the way down to the people who purchase.
Hmm.
In the information funnel, you've got the most basic entry level stuff all the way down to 2.5 hours of Ilya breaking down how you design an objective system, and that's awesome that exists. And I appreciate having help in the funnel And realistically, in this conversation, both sides. I mean, Richard, you guys get more total, no idea what I need to buy, what do I need to buy, phone calls than I can even imagine.
Oh
And
God, all day long,
all day
all day
long.
long.
And
Yeah.
Ilya, you're so
So,
deep in the weeds that I thank God that customers may not call you and ask you basic questions because it doesn't go well for anyone if that happens.
You know,
oh,
you,
he
you know.
probably has
So
1,000 emails.
um, so I, you joke, right? So for my day job, I get between
I'm
six and eight
sure he
hundred
does.
emails every day. So when I get the
Oh
plane
God,
and travel, I come back to
I'd quit.
thousands of email in my inbox.
Oh God,
I,
yeah.
for my locals, I started this subscription website and put up a paywall. You know why? It's not really a money making scheme. It's no, it pays for ammo, but that's pretty much it. But what it did, it throttled it down to a number of questions that is manageable.
Yeah.
Because
That's a
until
good
I did
idea.
that, by every private message, every way possible, everybody was asking me the same question. Most are trying to justify their or buying choices that have already happened, and then arguing with me until they're blue in the face just to protect the decision they already made. I just ran out of time.
Yeah,
There's
people
not
want
enough time in the day.
people call me up all the time for confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And the thing
Yep.
is, I just try to provide them the best information, try to find what is going to work for that person. And that's why I always say to call me because, going back and forth on the forum, it's not a conversation.
Mhm.
And just like we're having a conversation here, Ilya and I, we don't, 100% agree on everything, but we can have a conversation so we can both learn
As
and
long as
we
as
can
long as
both
we
be
both
better.
know that you're wrong and I'm right, I'm totally good with it.
So, but that's the whole thing, and we can do better as a community. There's too much division, and there's no reason why we can't all work together and grow this because it's we're in this for the long haul, and we want to provide better service, we want to provide better products, and and continue to grow this market.
Mhm.
And that's part of the reason why I wanted to come on the stream. Besides, Ilya and I were button heads, in regards to March, and I don't have anything against March at all.
Mhm.
I just was pointing out some of the cons that I see, but only from what I know when it comes to the warranty stuff. Because if you
Right.
didn't see that last post that I did, and this you asked about a specific company earlier,
Mhm.
because there's lawyers out there. I'm not going to name names, but somebody can go
Yeah.
back and look.
Yeah,
So
I know how it is. Yeah.
part of the reason why we don't carry them is, for one, dealing with the Germans is just it's very frustrating. Okay,
Man, if you
they
think
wanted
Central
us.
Europeans are bad, you ought to know about Eastern Europeans. I'm kidding.
Oh, they're horrible. I'm telling you.
so we were the one that kind of brought Minox to light, and so Mike, he tried to work with the engineers on to make some tweaks to the scopes.
Hmm.
So part of it was the turret. A lot of people did not like that heavy second rev.
Hmm.
The reticle, wanted them to work on, but I personally worked on the warranty. And so when I'm trying to basically I'm trying to speak to lawyers like
Hmm.
the distributors, here, distributors in the U.S. Speaking to their lawyers, speaking to the lawyers in Germany, and say, I pulled out all the good warranties that we talk about, the lifetime warranties, the
Hmm.
transferable warranties, and said, at this price point, if you want to be successful, these are some of the warranties that would help you gain, just people will take you a little bit more seriously. Because unfortunately, what we end up finding out is when they were going back, there's times that it took like 6 months for a scope to come back, and they were brand new scopes sometimes.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I know that.
us being stuck in the middle, we couldn't do it anymore.
Yep. No, no, no. It's
And
perfectly
yeah,
understandable. The only reason I
yeah,
went after you for the March stuff is that March is not Minox. So,
right, right,
yeah,
yeah.
and
No, but I was asking questions. I was asking questions.
the service turnaround time is long. We know that, but they
Mhm.
support everything and they do a quite good job of it. It's very different, right?
That's
But
that's good. And yeah,
yeah,
I'm not opposed to. I've heard really good things about March, and I wouldn't mind sitting down with them at Chacho and going over stuff with them. So
they
yeah, I don't have a problem with
they
them at all.
they're good people, right? So I've done some consulting for March in the past. There are very few companies I'm willing to do consulting for. I'm extremely picky. I don't need any other shit, right? I do it because I enjoy doing it.
Yeah,
And March is one of them, and I was happy to work with them. They're lovely people, right? So, but
that's good. Yeah.
there are quite a few others
So,
that I refuse to have anything to do with. So,
and there is other companies that you mentioned that did speak very positively, and you probably know a company I'm talking to, that the one that I refer to the most
mm,
often, said
yeah,
very positive things about March and about their abilities over there. So
yeah, they're very good.
yeah, that, yes, very good. And so as we expand our market, and if we get more people that are interested in, like, more of like the F class stuff, or like you said, they're coming out with like some more PRS based stuff,
Hmm.
then I'm open. I'm definitely open to having a conversation with them, and possibly carrying their stuff. Of course, it would have to go through a couple other people as well.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, but I'm not closed to carrying their products, because I know that they do have some good products.
Yeah. Well, not good. Like I said, they're good people. I'm very picky about this. I know people behind the scenes at quite a few companies, right? And
Yeah,
March is good people. But
that's
regardless,
good.
so Craig, everything okay? Everybody's
Oh
health
yeah,
all right?
my son's walking around here. I pulled
Okay.
him in and showed him the stream. Now he's wondering what this was, and was like, we'll talk later. So
Yeah.
it's way less exciting than he thinks.
Yeah. Well, it depends on who you ask.
He gives me he's a fourth grader and likes
Hmm.
streamers on YouTube, and we got this video that's to almost 100,000 views, and he's like, Dad, Mr. Beast does that in like 10 seconds. I'm like, yeah, that's true. That is very true.
Yes. Look, that's with all due respect to Mr. Beast and all that sort of stuff, we are in a niche market.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And if you
yeah,
are going to be dealing mostly with the high end, it's self-inflicted, even more niche than that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So it's
But
for the
what's
obsessively detailed-oriented crowd.
Yeah.
and what's crazy though is, for us, we're a small company, but right now, and I explain to people, because I've so many back orders, that currently, now that the 2 to 10's released, the OD
Hmm.
Green 5 to 27 ZCO is going to be released sometime soon. I'm
Hmm.
at 80 or so back orders, just me personally.
Hmm.
And so even with DCOs sending up to 20 scopes in a week, it's I get those 20 scopes in, two hit the our inventory, 18 go out to back orders, and then but I get that same 20 more back orders that week, and it's a constant thing. It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy, but
Good.
it's hard for me to, yeah, it's really good,
These
but
these are great problems.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
it
nice
is,
problem to
That's
it
where
have.
is.
we are with like rings and mounts. Is
Yeah,
we have another machine that they've sent over. We've had a German in the shop for about 7 or 8 days getting this thing fired up. We made first parts on it
Mhm.
today, just to create relief to make more rings and mounts.
Mhm.
And awesome. I hate being out of stock on anything. No one wants our products to be in stock more than I do.
I bet. Yeah.
But
but
we're
we're going to
making
be
as many as
ordering
we
a lot.
can.
I
Yeah,
remember,
good.
when, like you had that conversation with Jay, that it's like,
Mhm.
the 36s and 35s are not the big sellers. I was just like, oh, the 36s are going to be really
Yeah.
big for you
Yeah,
guys now.
and we talk to
Really
all of our
big.
dealers about that because the 36s are a big deal, but just like Mr. Beast gets more views than we do, more
Yeah.
people buy
30 and
$1,000.
34.
Yeah, more
Yeah,
people are buying
that's
in that
true.
mid price point. So, I'm always honest with people. I say, look, I'm going to tell you what we do from a global scale.
Mhm.
Which products overall do the best, but you have to know your customer, and obviously you guys do. And if you're absolutely hammering sales on Zico, you're selling more 36. So obviously
Yeah,
order them. If you had a huge volume of loophole and you're selling a ton of 35,
right.
obviously order
Exactly.
the
Yeah,
35. So
yeah. But we're
So
go- we're gonna
for
we're
those
gonna be
listening,
sending some big POs.
they're talking about tube diameters.
yes.
Yes.
So,
And so, but also
Here's
with
an interesting
tangent.
one. I got a
Go ahead.
separate topic here, Ilya, and it
okay.
bothers me a little bit. So we're in an industry where basically everybody makes parts that then mate with everybody else's parts.
Hmm.
What should the outside diameter of a 34 millimeter scope tube be?
Oh.
Because I think I know because I've measured a lot of them. What should the diameter of that tube be?
I mean, they are all different. Most of them very, very slightly oversized, but not by much, but very, very slightly. I've never measured so many of them to have a good idea.
So we measured a lot of them,
Hmm.
and it seems that the accepted tolerance is 34, 0 minus about a thou or a thou and a half.
Thousandths of an inch. Let me see.
Yes.
What is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
What is it in civilized units? Hold on.
In Kami, that's like
Okay, got it. Yeah,
5. Yeah.
yeah.
05.
Okay, that's about right. Yeah,
But it
in the ballpark.
seems that like all of the optic main tubes are on a minus tolerance. And then because obviously we start making rings and mounts, we buy a ton of rings and mounts and measure them. And we make our rings roughly a thousandth over nominal, knowing that virtually all optics are at nominal with the misses being tiny amount on the minus. There are obviously exceptions
Correct.
to this, like March is on the plus. They tend to be like a thou over, or
Yeah, correct.
05 in
That's
Kami
the way I
units
would do
over.
it if I was doing it. But yeah.
Yeah, I was curious what your thought was. You're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, here's the rule.
No, there's
I
no
had
rule.
this conversation with Richard yesterday.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
no
I
rule
know.
that I'm aware of.
That's why I put my head down. I was like, oh no, not that.
Uh,
Yeah, that's Sig
This
Optic.
isn't just that conversation though.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
one that commonly like because somebody might get. It's typically the lower end optics that come in oversized
Yeah.
for whatever reason, and it's quality of NO layers, whatever.
yeah.
But we get the question once in a while. We're like, look, we could make our rings really big, but that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't cater to the
We're not going to.
that low end market. So
It's very interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there is any sort of a rule to it. I I would have imagined that you would get a whole range because the most of them are made by a relatively small number of OEMs when they machine the tubes, right? As the tool wears, the size is going to get slightly bigger, and then they'll replace the tool. I would have thought you get the whole range. The fact that most of them are slightly undersized is odd.
put your helmet on.
I think what they're probably doing is you take your maximum likely thickness of ano and you add that in to get to a 34 on the nose.
That's entirely possible. Yeah.
So if your anodized layer fluctuates between, let's say, a thousandth and a thousandth and a half,
Mhm.
you're going to take that thousandth and a half as your max tolerance stack, and then you're going to 0 minus your tube, so that on the small side you're a thousandth or so smaller than nominal, and on the large side you're bang on nominal because you don't want to be oversized,
Okay.
obviously.
Okay.
And that's kind of that's how we got to it, measuring a bunch of optics.
Mm-hmm.
And
That may
we kind of
very well
backed
be
into
true.
that logic, but it's a good guess.
Yeah, it's probably a good guess. So let me see. I want to see if there are any comments.
Yeah, let's run through questions, and
So I just
we'll
went
queue
to
it
the
up and do it again.
beginning, and let's see. That's all perfectly reasonable. Some guy named Savage Hands is trying to get on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right, Mr. G5. Just talking about injectors and fuel. Okay, that's all good. Oh yeah. That's actually a good comment. So somebody's asking how many elements does an NLP or binocular have in the two barrels. I don't know. I've never taken one apart, but I know the eyepiece is very sophisticated. It's a complicated eyepiece, so that's probably a good number of elements. Binoculars have fewer elements than rifle scopes because there is no erector system. Instead of that, you have the prism, which cuts down on a number of optical elements.
And it's also no zoom range, right? So you get rid of your erector and your zoom, and you should cut.
Well, correct. Well, the zoom is an erector, right? All the zoom stuff is an erector system. So you replace it with a prism. That's why you cannot have variable magnification easily. And the prism does the erecting. So the erector system does two things. One, it creates for zoom either just magnification or variable magnification. It also flips the image right side up. In the binocular, all of that is accomplished by the prism assembly, which is just basically two pieces.
Okay.
Oh, that's actually a very good question from Mr. Benjamin Belkin. What is the impact optically when wearing shooting safety glasses? Are we negating what we paid tier 1 money for when wearing common eye protection? What do you recommend? I'll admit I often go naked-eyed. So if you want to see the best, you kind of have to go naked eye. There are some higher end shooting glasses that are reasonable. The cheap ones are a bad juju. The way you look at them, they're mostly defocused, but they can introduce distortions because the lenses are not well controlled. It generally is a good idea to get a nice pair of shooting glasses. The biggest problem with glasses happens when the sun is low and in front of you. Not only are you getting weird flare through the scope, you also have light reflection from your sunglasses back into the eyepiece, and that fucks everything up. So while I very seldom shoot without eye protection, I've had a gun blow up in my hands a couple of times, and I found that eye protection is very important. Unfortunately, no eye protection is perfect, and if you really want the minimum deterioration, you need to get something fairly nice. I've been told the ones from Night Optical, something like that, KNIGHT or something like that, are pretty good, but I have not tried them. They're $200, and I'm too cheap to spend $200 on regular glasses.
And
So
apparently they use Zeiss lenses. That's what they advertise
yeah,
on
that's
there. So I don't
yeah.
know.
A lot of people use Zeiss lenses. That's good marketing. It's like, oh, I use
Okay.
shot glass, I use lit glass. That's all
Oh,
marketing.
that's true. Yeah, different
Yeah, no,
prescriptions and yeah.
that's all bullshit. So
You're,
it's
you're gonna have
it's
to tell me. You're gonna have to tell me how to set all this up, Ilya. So when I set up my podcast and invite you and Craig on and whoever else, because this is my first time doing this, and I see that you got Rumble. I guess I gotta have a Rumble account and and
yeah.
and
Well,
yeah, I don't even know
there
all
are
this
many
stuff.
there are
So
many different streaming services. I use Rumble because my pay site is done through Locals, which is owned by Rumble. So for me, it's very convenient. And also, Rumble doesn't do speech control. YouTube keeps on trying to ban me, demonetize me, shadow ban me.
yeah,
Instagram,
yeah,
Facebook, they all do the same thing. Rumble doesn't do any of that, so I go through there.
okay,
So,
that's cool.
so Mr. Stay on targets. Ilya, every time you touch your wrist, okay, no, no, no. Oh yeah, I was about to say, I'm sure I ask Ilya questions he gets annoyed with. Not so much because for you it's important enough. We're actually paying a small fee every month for the honor of asking questions, right? That shows you actually want the answer. What bothers me is people who ask questions and they don't want my answer. They just want me to reaffirm something they've already done. That irritates
Yep.
the hell out of me. Lack of intellectual curiosity is a problem. Okay,
No,
okay,
and
so
and then that's why I'm here is I'm down to learn. It's just like there's when you start speaking about some of this stuff, I just kind of zone out, and it's like, oh, okay, I don't understand the all the technical aspects, and I'm trying to learn, but you're still going much deeper than probably I even
I
really
have a
need. But I'm trying to
whole
learn.
I have a whole series of educational videos on this I recorded over the years.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I've watched a bunch. I've watched a bunch of them.
okay, so somebody talking about ZP5. Yes, I have a ZP5. I love the scope, but the warranty scares me. I've considered selling it and getting a razor just in case. So if you're in Europe, apparently Minox are reasonably well supported, but in the US they just vanished. So
Yeah,
completely abandoned the market.
I don't even know if they make the most popular with the MR4 reticle. I don't even think that's an option, at least from what I've seen. And that was the one that they sold the most of. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with them. So but in Europe, they have their
Yeah.
support, but it just depends where you're at.
One of the problem with Minox is that Minox is sort of so they're also owned by Blaser, that whole group, and
Yeah,
a group called GSO, German Sport Optics. That's what
yeah.
Optronic is sort of morphed into, and they do a lot of OEM design and other things for other people. So I think they just lost a little bit of interest into the consumer Minox brand because they do a lot of stuff for other people behind the scenes, a lot of military stuff. So
Oh, one more thing on that. So when they did that promo where you buy the Blaser rifle, and
hmm
they gave the 50% off on any Minox product. I don't know this for sure, but from what I wasn't able to confirm it, but it made sense. There's people that got in trouble because it was not supposed to include the ZP5 brand, because that made it much less than the actual cost.
yeah, and
So,
also devalued the value of ZP5.
oh, ridiculous amount. Yes.
So
Yeah.
here's a good question, and if you don't mind, Craig and Richard, I'll let you take a stab at this before I offer my opinion.
Okay.
From Mega Gooch,
Which
whichever way
is
you
that?
pronounce. What do you think is the best performance for the price scope out there? either an exact model or a price range. Where do you think you're getting the most for your money?
What do you need to get?
Yeah, what are you trying to accomplish exactly?
Right. So this is the impossibly hard part of this is if I need to see everything all the time, it's a different answer than if I just like to shoot on nice days with my buddies. Also, how much does money mean to you?
Exactly.
So I've got a very good friend who has been quite successful in his life and loves to go on very, very high dollar hunts. There is no relevance in price to him. If he's spending a six-figure amount of money to go kill something, the next $1,000 or $2,000 on an optic is so irrelevant it's not even funny.
Yeah.
So what's the best price to performance optic out there? It's the best one he can possibly buy. I don't think this is an answerable question, so I will not, because I think it's a and mega gouch. I'm not trying to be a dick, but it's a low information.
Yeah, don't be.
Ask.
That's my job.
Okay, I'll let him do it. I think it's a low information ask.
That's
and I don't. I think that the challenge that I'm going to turn back on mega gouch is learn to ask a better question, because you'll certainly get a better answer.
Okay.
Or call me, and then I can help, try to guide you to the proper optic, because it all depends on what you're doing. I mean, are you hunting? Are you trying to do precision, PRS type of shooting? Are you doing F class? Are you do it all depends. So you got to find out what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what's your price range. And then if you have looked through some optics, is there any features that stick out for you, or is there any reticles you're like, I like that reticle? And so that's the conversations I go through every day. And so I try to get the best choice, not the best for me. I try to get the best choice for each customer. And a lot of times it's not something we carry or something they already have, but it just and that's why it has to be a conversation, and it's hard to do this over YouTube.
I will come back though and say this. Today, $1,000 buys you a better optic than $1,000 has ever bought you. Today, $2,000 buys you a better optic than $2,000 ever, and at four, across the entire gamut.
Yes.
Today, dollar for dollar, you get more value and more quality optic than you ever have at any other time in human history. So good. That's good.
Absolutely.
And in general, as you spend more money, you do get a better optic. Now, there is a point of diminishing returns, and there are anomalies and variation inside this. So is a $4,000 optic twice as good as $2,000? No. But can it allow you to do things that $2,000 optic cannot? Yes. Is that worth $2,000 to you? I don't know. Is it? But
exactly.
The products are better than they've ever been. And I'm going to sign off after this. I'm going to kiss the kids goodnight. But I think that where we are in optics today is awesome. Ilya, like you said earlier, this is likely is what's more important, reticle design or glass? I don't know. What are you doing with it? Because reticle design's no use if you can't see it. But in the middle of the day, reticles matter more because every glass can see. So again, all of these questions are intensely nuanced based on what are you wanting to do with them. But we have more options, more quality per dollar available today than we ever have. And in 5 years, we're going to sit around and go, oh my God, what's happening with electronics? So here we go.
Anyway, in 5 years, nothing was going to happen with batteries, so nothing interesting is going to happen with electronics. 10 years, maybe.
All right, Craig. Hey, you know what? It was nice seeing you again, and we'll be back in touch for some more.
And hey, send some of that weather this way if you could. I've just been sitting here looking at you, pissed off the whole time.
Oh, this weather? Oh. My allergies are killing me right now. So
Craig, I spent 28 years in California. I bailed out in 2019. The weather is not worth it.
Oh no!
I'll try
fly
to move
out and borrow it once
in
a while.
Yeah, you can come out. You can come out here and but
much cheaper to borrow it.
Yeah.
It's something like if it floats, flies, or votes Democrat, it's easier to rent it. Anyway, see you guys.
All right, thank you, Craig. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. All right, Hexagon. So to answer the Megagooch, whatever, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Oh, okay. Let's
Question.
see here.
So here's how it works. If you're looking for where the sweet spot is, per application is different. In a nutshell, if you want to do competition, precision stuff, sweet spot's about 2 grand. If you are talking general purpose hunting scope, it's about 800 to 1,000. If you're talking low power variables, yeah, about 12, 1,500 bucks. That's basically where we are right now. That's, in my opinion, where the inflection points for these different rifle scope types start happening, where you get into the case of diminishing returns. For about
Yeah,
2 grand, I can get a precision, competition-oriented long-range rifle scope. It's not as nice as my tangents, but I'm really not compromising on features. I'm not really compromising much on quality. I don't have to worry about sacrificing too much. A lot here depends on how you feel about purchasing Chinese scopes. Some of the better high-end Chinese scopes at 1,200 bucks are very, very good right now. I think the Japanese American stuff at 2 grand is better, and I think that's where the inflection point is. But you can make an argument both ways. If you're spending more than about 2 grand on a precision rifle optic right now, that means you're willing to pay increasingly more money for
yeah,
relatively incremental increase in performance. But it is still an increase in performance. I'm about to shoot a match this coming weekend, supposed to be snow and everything. And when air conditions get shitty, I'm going to see things with my tangent that other people with their loopholes and bursts don't.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
just, okay.
And so when you're traveling, and you're spending a lot of money, you're spending a whole weekend, or sometimes, people are traveling for a week. That $2,000 gets absorbed pretty quickly when it comes to, your travel, your gas, your lodging. So,
Hmm.
a lot of people are just like, well, I don't want to spend that much on a scope, and it's just like, well, aren't you spending like $5,000 or $6,000 to go to this match, and you do it a few times over the year or like a dozen times. So in my opinion, the price of the scope gets absorbed pretty easily with the cost of the game that we're in. So
Hmm.
I mean that's why I tell people that, it's better to try to get what you can afford. And if you can afford a little bit more, there's no reason why you shouldn't. It's like if you go to, I mean, this is not the greatest analogy, but like you go to the optometrist, and they're just like, if you had to pay different amounts to get better vision, I mean, who's going to say like, oh, you know what, I'm going to skimp, I'm going to skimp a little bit, and I'm just going to get 2100, corrected to 2100 vision versus, potentially like 2020, 2015, or something like that. And sometimes, as Ilya explained, in adverse conditions, that's where a lot of the higher end optics really will end up paying off. When it's a clear day, when it's like this, there's going to be a lot of cheap optics that look really good. But you start throwing in mirage, you start throwing in fog, all that stuff. It's going to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, like I said, so at around 2 grand, my sort of a yardstick for this is Burris XTR Pro. It's a very, very nice scope. It's amazing what you can get these days for 2 grand. It wasn't like this 15 years ago. Not at
Hmm.
all.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Sundin564 goes, didn't like make a variable zoom bino. They used to make this thing called the Duovid. It wasn't so much variable, it was switch power. It was a doubler in there. They made it, it was not bad, but it was hideously difficult to keep the lenses collimated at the same power and all that. So that didn't really go anywhere. Leica could get away with it for a little while because Leica knows how to assemble stuff. But there's a reason nobody really does this anymore. Hey, Richard, what's your last name?
Alves, Alves.
Okay, so you're not Richard Hubert. Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody says, "Excuse my ignorance. Is that Richard Hubert?"
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if they're like kind of crossing me up with Jeff, or like one of Jeff's retarded cousins or something like that. But
But it's Hubert, not Huber.
or
Jeff was
Hubert,
correct.
yeah, with a
Yeah,
T.
I don't
Okay, yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure.
Mr. Raven Rifle says,
Oh,
"I better get an invite." Who is Raven Rifle?
that's Dan Herride. He's a friend. Also, he was also a customer. Bought a lot
Hmm.
of high end scopes for me. He started a rifle business.
Okay.
Raven Rifles, and so he does custom rifles down in Texas.
Of
And
course.
but yeah, he's a competitor as well. And
Okay.
but yeah, he likes to give me shit, and I give him shit back.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Raven Rifle, you ever want to get on the live stream with me? Anytime. Let me know where in Texas you are. I go to Dallas all the time. My work's technically in Dallas. All right, let's see. Sunny564 goes, Leica says the Noctivite has 12 elements per barrel. That's about right. For nice binocular, that should be about right. Okay, Mr. Sundin564 is in Canada, and he bought his Minex from Europe. Good luck with the warranty. Oh, here's a loaded question. What is the most important, reticle design or glass? They're both important. It's not. You have to think of it as an overall system, and the system is only as good as the worst component. You can have the most amazing reticle and a shitty scope, and it won't get you anywhere, right? You have the most amazing scope with an invisible reticle. Well, it's an observation device, it's not a rifle scope anymore.
Yep.
It's not either or. You have to have everything.
Yeah, it's a combination of everything. I don't like people saying, well, this is great optically, and then the reticle stinks. So
Yep.
it's.
So Mr. Megagoch corrected. He was talking about tactical scopes. I always thought the 1,000, 1,200 options were great for the money, but it seems to have dropped off in value. The 600 to 800 scopes are now better, and the 1,500 plus optics are pulling ahead.
I will say though that I'll say that in that price range, and so I don't know a lot of the other, like some of the other brands, like the Arkans and the Apexes and stuff like that. So I don't have a lot of experience with them, but I will say the Mark IV loopholes, basically they come in under $1,500. I think it's a really good scope for the money. I think that they kind of knocked it out of the park in that price range there, which in my opinion, at least from the optics that I have experience with, that was kind of an area where it was kind of lacking, and I think that they did a really good job there.
I'm with you. I have a couple of Mark IV HDs here. When I told Nick at Leopold that I think Mark IV HD is a better scope for the money than Mark V, he was very offended. But I think he got over it by now.
Yeah.
But I do. A Mark V is a good scope, but once you look into illumination models, it's a tough price range to compete in.
It is, yeah.
But where the Mark IV is, there was kind of a hole in the market. Mark IV does very well there.
Yep, I agree.
And there we go. And seems to me that light optics works, different ones, 4.5 to 30s, etc., are hard to beat for the price. That is generally true. So they are not the only game in town, because other manufacturers also want to play, but they're definitely in that mix. Japan Optics Limited has this new 5 to 35 that they have. Telson has it, this new Canadian company. That's a nice scope. As I said, Burris XTR Pro is a very nice scope. That's made in US. They're all playing in that more or less same price range. The 6 to 36 is all more. But the rest are playing in that $2,000-ish price range and competing against each other extremely well. So one of the interesting things with these Japanese scopes, the better 6 to 36 variants, they're not all identical, have much, much stronger off-axis performance than the previous generation. The 4.5 to 30s are they're nice scopes, but then start getting off-axis. There's clear image quality deterioration that happens relatively quickly. With the better of the 6 to 36s, like the Razor Gen 3, the Element Theos, Zeiss S3, you can dial for quite a while before image really gets a big hit.
I got
Richard,
a question for you. Oh yeah, well, go ahead.
Do you guys carry Element or not? I know you carry Zeiss, right?
No, we don't. And if I was at SHOT Show a little bit longer, I would have tried to reach out to some other manufacturers as well. So, unfortunately, when you're a small business, you can't carry everything. But yeah, that's where we're limited. But I have a question for you.
Of course.
In your opinion, what and I know there's a lot of things that make, it's not a straightforward answer, but
Mhm.
so we see that, the 540i is a 8x scope.
Mhm.
Okay. Most of the high end premium scopes typically stick under a 6x erector.
Mhm.
In your opinion, if you had the choice, where is what would be like the maximum you would want to go for an erector system if you're building like your ultimate scope? Like say it's like, I know you wrote like Tangent. So if Tangent came to you and said, okay, we're gonna go and design a new scope from scratch, what magnification range would you prefer for, say it was, for like PRS, so
Mhm.
um out of curiosity, I'm just wondering, with the current technology right now, is it 6, 7, 8? Where do you think would be the limitation with what's
Okay.
available?
So I'm gonna start the answer with somebody else's words, not mine. So there is
Okay.
one gentleman who is behind almost every high-performing riflescope optical system out there. He's designed the best ones out there. And when he was asked the same exact question by me, uh, he thought that with 5 times erector, you basically can have truly minimal compromises. Okay.
Hmm.
But I also know that he has designed higher erector ratios because he does designs for a living. He's a consultant, and he's done quite a few, and they are also quite good. But with higher erector ratios, you do see deterioration. The catch is that how much of it do you see? How important is it, and how well is it mitigated? And as we go into more and more complex designs, it's mitigated increasingly better and better, right? The 8x erect ratio scopes of today are significantly better than the 8x erect ratio scopes of yesterday, of
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago. And what is the optimal erect ratio for my purposes really is going to depend what I'm going to do with it. For competition, I don't need a very large erect ratio. 5 is enough, 6 is fine.
Yeah.
I don't really care. So I shoot mostly with tangents. And one of the biggest reasons I do that is that of the scopes I have, these are the nicest ones, so they'll have a lot of nice scopes. And also, there's a little bit of a practical thing. I'm friendly with a lot of different brands, right? If I go shoot with Vortex only, somebody in the marketing at Burris will start claiming that I'm sponsored by Vortex. I'm not sponsored by anyone.
Right.
If I
Yeah.
start shooting with the Burris scope, somebody at Leupold is going to start saying that I'm sponsored by Burris. When I shoot a tangent, nobody's wondering why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For my shooting skills, I'm not very good. All of them work just fine. There's no real practical difference. I enjoy nice glass. I shoot with the best glass I have. So
Yeah.
the best I have 3 tangents. I have 3 tangent rifle scopes. I have 2 children. One goes to one child when I die. The other one goes to a second child. The third one is going to be buried with me.
I
So
got to catch up because I only have one precision rifle and one ZCO. But as you know, California's expensive, so
yeah,
they're still young, so I got time to
yeah,
get each
very,
one of them,
yeah,
set up.
yeah.
So
My kids finally did their hunter safety class this year. This is the first time they applied for hunting seasons here in New Mexico. So I'm very excited.
right on.
So, but anyhow, so for competition use, hunting use, etc., I don't need very high erector ratio because I don't use very high magnifications very much. And like if I have time, trying to shoot very far, I'm gonna dial up to look at weather conditions, at wind, mirage. Otherwise, I don't need huge magnification range.
Yeah.
Everything changes when we start talking about low power variables, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And
That's a whole
that's a
different.
different
Yeah.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are compromises involved with it,
Yeah.
but I'd rather have a nice 1 to 10 than a nice 1 to 8, or a nice 1 to 8 than a nice 1 to 6. But again, I am at heart a precision guy.
Hmm.
So I view low power variables as essentially designated marksman scopes most of the time. So I want good one power, but I'm also I routinely shoot to 800-900 yards with 6-8 power low power LPVOs. So
Yeah.
so that's why I tend to prefer front focal plane low power variables. I tend to prefer fairly nice ones. I often like them to have sight focus, like Delta, this European company, have a Striker 1 to 10 by 20 inch, very nice, has sight focus.
Hmm. Yeah.
which helps me because when
Oh
you are
yeah. Absolutely.
at a really extended reach, it does help. I don't need it
Yeah.
for fighting LPVO, but
Right.
to like I have a Vortex Razor 1 to 10. I actually went back to Vortex and I had them reset the parallax to 300 yards.
Oh,
So on
nice. Okay.
10 power, the targets at 100 yards are not perfectly sharp, right?
Yeah.
But because I set the focus distance 300 yards, all the way out to infinity, the image is sharp. I'm at hyperfocal distance, right?
Yeah.
And when I
That's
shoot
that's
closer
that's
than
pretty
that,
cool.
I don't dial up to 10. Like that's a compromise I'm willing to take.
Yeah.
So there, I want higher accuracy. If I can get it, I want it. Now I have several 1 to 6s I like and use all the time, but I'll prefer a nice 1 to 8, a nice 1 to 10.
What and I don't know if somebody else has come out with this, but what I would like to see for an LPVO is at 1 power, the parallax will be set at, I don't know, 25, 50 yards. We'll just say
Mhm.
between somewhere between there. And then once you start raising the magnification, then it then it like will switch.
Yeah,
Not like
yeah, yeah, yeah. Schmidt
so
has that. Schmidt dual
okay, so
CC
that
does exactly that.
okay, it does that. Okay, I wasn't sure if it did.
So the dual CC scope, it shifts the
Yeah,
whole thing inside. So when you are on CC mode, CC stands for close combat,
yeah.
your parallax is 7 yards. And then
Okay.
when you switch, start going in higher power, by the time you get to like 1.1 or 1.2, it goes to, I think they have different models, either 100 meters or 200 meters, something like that.
Okay, so that's exactly what. Yeah. So I wasn't
And
sure if it did that. I don't
yes,
have any experience with that one.
yeah. I tested it, a spectacular scope. I can't stomach the price, super expensive. But again,
Yeah.
if you're going to have one gun, if you, hold on, if you're going to have one gun and you're going to have one best scope on it, and it needs to be a low power variable, Schmidt Dual CC is it.
Oh, really? Okay, that's good to know. We carry Schmidt now, so maybe I'll have to get one to go and demo myself.
It's, yeah, you should. So the reticle you want is MDRT6. It's the abbreviated tree reticle. It's wonderful.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Wow.
my basic take on scopes in many ways is that, like, if you can, some people just can't afford it, then, shoot with what you can
Yeah.
afford it. Like, a
Exactly.
good shooter will outshoot me with a $500 scope no matter what I use, right?
Exactly.
But if you can kind of afford it reasonably well, everybody should have one really nice scope.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy for me to say, I shoot with nice stuff, I don't pay for any of this shit, right? So I'm shooting with somebody else's money. But if I was spending my own money, I wouldn't have three changes, but I would have one, right?
Yeah. And well, that's why I have one precision rifle,
Yeah.
one ZCO. That's all I can afford. But I built it the way I wanted. I used all premium parts, all
Perfect.
custom
Good.
everything. And but the thing is, having more rifles wouldn't do me any good. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I don't have the
Well,
time. So
I have I have a lot of guns. I live in a relatively free state,
yeah,
and I've been doing this for a long time. So,
yeah,
and I love them all, but again, when I'm not testing something, if you see me at the range, I'm probably shooting the fix with a tangent on it,
yeah,
or one of my nice custom built ARs with the 1 to 10 razor. So that's
yeah.
pretty much. And I build all my ARs. I build a lot of my guns. So Mr. Link is going. Are you all going to the NRA show? I'm not. I don't know if Richard is.
No, it was a stretch for me to already go to the SHOT Show just last year, and that was for the first time
Hmm.
because once I come back, I get stuck like Ilya and have 400 or 500 emails, and so and then it takes me a month to get caught up. So I try not to get away if I don't. And a lot of times I'll take my work with me. So
Hmm.
I'll go on vacation and like once I'm done with with the family's out, we're back at the hotel, whatever. I'll go and
Hmm.
check my messages and try to answer what I can. But yeah, it's just hard right now, especially we're in transition over at CS Tactical right now. So I just don't have the time to go to shows and maybe in the future, once things kind of free up for me. So we'll
Did you
see.
go to Shot Show this year?
I did not go to SHOT Show this year.
Yeah, that's a shame. So I'm gonna share my screen to answer the next questions here. Hold on. There we go. So Mr. Cunt Bucket says there are a couple of questions. I'll get to them. Says, I absolutely love the idea of 1.5 to 12, but perhaps I'm greedy by wanting such a wide range of zoom. So there is at least 1.5 to 12 with a 36mm objective that's coming toward the end of the year. It should be a very nice scope. I can't tell you who's bringing it out, but I'm excited to see it. And
Thanks.
then Sundin 564 goes, I think March makes 1.5 to 15. Yes, they do. Here it is, picture from earlier today, sitting on one of my custom built ARs. It's a dual focal plane, 1.5 to 15, and this is the most flexible, the most general purpose rifle scope in existence today. Okay, so it is not as nice on 15 as dedicated 3 to 15s. It is not as nice on 1.5 as dedicated 1.5 to 6s. But it's pretty damn decent across magnification range. It's an accomplishment for March, and the scope is small and short and has a lot of adjustment and all that. It
That's pretty cool.
is a true generalist scope. The problem with these is that people who only shoot 100 yards in the range will go set it up and look at it next to some $2,000 scope, which is a lot cheaper than this. That is, 3 to 15 or 5 to 25, and go, oh, it's not as good. No, but try to take your 5 to 25 onto 1.5 power with the fiber illuminated reticle. I'll see how you do. Right. So that's the thing. But it is a true generalist scope. So going back to this thing, the 5x ratio does seem to be the most common I see from PRS guys. Does that mean the hunting setup lovers like myself are the reason for the higher mag ratios? No, marketing people are the reason for the higher mag ratios.
Yep.
Larger cells. But there's a second reason, military. So lots of rifle scope designs are driven by different military tenders, especially in the higher end world. And the military is willing to sacrifice some of the optical quality for the wider magnification range, because what that allows them to do is use thermal and night vision and other clip-ons much more easily on low power, right? A 7 to 35 for military is much less useful than a 4 to 35 because they actually have a use for 4 power. But if you're shooting
or like a 3 to 27, is a perfect example.
3 to 27 or 3.5 to 28 Carlos, 3 to 27 Schmidt, which by Schmidt standard is really not a great scope, but they built it for a military tender, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The reason why Steiner has a 4 to 28 for the same reasons, they needed 4 power on the low end for a military tender. There are quite a few situations like this. And here's the thing, the flexible magnification range has a value on its own because of what else you can add to it. Clip-ons, for example, right? You can build the best 10 to 30 power scope in the world, and it's not going to work also quite so well in the middle of the night, right? You can take a $500 3 to 15 scope, put a night vision clip-on in front of it, and after dark outshoot any $5,000 tangent, right? Because of the freaking clip-on.
Yeah.
So you have to think about it a little bit again from a system level standpoint. Military thinks of these things as a system. Rifle, scope, clip-on, monocular, laser illuminator. You know how much money there is in various D-balls and all that sort of stuff, illuminators? And there is a reason for it. The military truly cares. Okay.
Yeah.
And they spend money. So lots of scopes are designed with a particular military program in mind.
Yep.
And then win or lose, they throw it out to the civilian market, quirks and all.
Exactly.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. We actually got through all of the comments, I think. And I've been at it for an hour and 53 minutes. I try to keep these things limited to 2 hours. So, guys, you have 6.5 minutes to ask questions, and then I'm going to wave Richard goodbye and wrap this up. I hope you enjoyed overall the discussion with Craig. I really appreciate Craig. Like, they worked hard on that review, and I said some uncomplimentary things, and he took it like an adult. When this whole thing started, I don't think you were here for that. Maybe you were. I got a barrage of messages and emails to take it apart, and I'm listening to this, a bunch of dicks. Why take it apart?
Oh, really?
It's a well-done review. There are things I would have done differently. There's some optical stuff could have been done better because, well, it's what I do for a living. But take it apart. That's why I didn't want to do it without Craig here. I
Right. Yeah.
recorded
That's fair.
and
That's fair.
I recorded an episode for the guys at Dope Talk where we talked about this as well. I don't think they released it yet, which is good. I really wanted the first time I talk about it on video to be with Craig here. So really don't want to even margin look like I'm doing anything behind anybody's back. And you've known me long enough. I'm kind of a in your face type of asshole. So
I am too, but unfortunately, I've had to dial that back. So,
well, you
I'm
sell
not.
this
I'm
stuff.
not.
You have to be nicer. I
Yeah.
don't. I really don't.
Exactly. So,
Yeah,
but
it's a
no, I
professional.
and I wanted to be, I wanted to participate too because, like I said, I think we can all, grow and make and have better products that come out in the future.
Mhm.
And there's so much division that there's no reason why we can't work together and try to, just try to be a community. So
Yeah, I've tried to do occasional collaborative stuff with some of the YouTubers who need a little bit of technical knowledge and stuff, and most of them are very territorial. Some are okay. I don't really care. So,
yeah,
not my
exactly.
thing. All right, Mr. Harry Grubbs, I'm learning a lot. I really appreciate the time you guys spent sharing your expertise. Well, thank you, Harry. Really do appreciate it. I do this because I enjoy doing this. I really enjoy the live interaction. That's why I always try to do these Q&As. So, Richard, I do these live streams under good circumstances every 2 weeks or so. It's not
Okay.
super regular. Sometimes it's every other week, depending on my work travel. I travel for work all the time. But at
Yeah.
least once a month, more commonly, I do this twice a month. So um, you're more than welcome to join me whenever you're up to it. What I
Yeah.
usually
Absolutely.
do, I usually have sort of a topic I want to talk about for maybe 20, 25 minutes, and then it's just a
Yeah.
Q&A and a general discussion, and that can go in all sorts of weird ass angles.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm weird too, so you know, and that's why when my podcast comes out, it's rich on the spectrum. Partially because, and it's no secret. I'm on the spectrum. I'm a little bit odd, but hey, it is what it is. But it's going to be on multiple topics, not just be on firearms. It's going to be on all types of things, and so I invite you to be on my show, and
I will do.
like I said. Yeah, so we'll definitely do some stuff together, and like I said, just try to, um, just be a community and try to get some good products out there and push all these manufacturers to to do better as well.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's very, very true. The funny thing is that, when I tell people that I'm not on the spectrum, everybody is absolutely shocked because they feel like I should.
hey, I just found out like in my 40s. I'm
Yeah.
51 years old. Okay, I'm 51, and I didn't find out until I got two kids on the spectrum, and it's because found out from them, and they're both young,
Yeah, it's
and then
it's
it just kind of made sense.
it's very inheritable. The catch
Yes.
is that did you smoke when you were younger?
Uh, like in junior high for a little while, but
Okay.
but not a lot. But yeah.
There is an interesting thing with ADHD and some other things that are very heavily diagnosed right now. One of the reasons we see them a lot more prominently is that nicotine actually mitigates a lot of the effects of mild ADHD and other autistic spectrum disorders. And since we've more or less eliminated cigarettes and nicotine to a very high degree from our world, a lot of that was previously not noticeable comes out.
So what's crazy about that is,
Hmm.
I grew up when my parents and grandparents, or not my dad, but like my mom, my grandparents, they would smoke in the house, they'd smoke in the car, as I was young.
Hmm.
And it just, that's how it was in the 70s and 80s. Right.
Yeah.
So, maybe it did mask some of my wackiness until,
It's
until
possible.
later.
It's hard to say against all of this. Very hard to say. Okay,
Yeah.
there are two last questions, and then I'm going to wrap this up. So,
Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Lee, stay on targets, goes, could you give a quick overview of objective lens size for general purpose scopes? I.e., why and or when would you go from one size to the next, other than LPVOs, which need to be small? All right, so you need a large objective if you have high magnification or low light. It's as simple as that. Generally speaking, short scopes with large objective lenses are hard to make. If you want an ultra short 3 to 12 by 56, pay some money, right? Because that's going to be
Man.
kind of a big deal. For general purpose hunting in North America, for most places, you 42 a very high quality 42 millimeter objective scope is plenty. 3 to 15 by 42, in my opinion, is the single best general purpose configuration for hunting situations. And on 6-7 power, it's very good in low light, and you're not going to be making a 600-yard shot in low light. Not if you're an ethical hunter, most likely. The moment you're starting going to high magnification, exit pupil is king, you need to start bumping up the objective diameter. Same in low light. If you're sitting in a blind at night and trying to see something relatively far away, and you want to be on 12 power at night, yeah, you need a large objective. So the reason we see so many 50 millimeter scopes right now is that they kind of hit a nice happy medium. I wish there were a little bit more 42 millimeter ones. That's why I'm so happy to see Schmidt do the 3 to 18 by 42 meta, which keeps the scope trim, light, compact, and optically very, very good.
I think that's one of the ones we have on order that we're gonna stock. So we're gonna check that one out.
Yeah, they have that front focal plane one. I helped them a little bit, just some advice with the reticle. I like the reticle, I like the scope, so it should do very well for them. So that's that. And then Mr. Megagooch, is the Burris XTR3i still a good scope for the money? It was flavor of the month for a long time on the forums, but I don't see many, if any, in the wild. I have XTR3i 3.3 to 18. They moved the production of these to Philippines when they went eliminated. And the 3.3 to 18 is a really nice scope for about $1,100 and at that $1,000 price range. It's easily one of the better crossover scopes for the money. The reason you don't see the 5.5 to 30 nearly as much is that the US made XTR Pro that's a little more expensive as a step up optically. And now, for all practical purposes, it's going to be replaced by XTR PS that has a heads-up screen inside. And that is going to actually make a pretty big difference. That's also made in the Philippines. The optical system is closer to XTR Pro, and it's able to take in feed from external devices. So, but the 3.3 to 18 XTR3i is a very nice scope. I have one. I like it quite a lot.
Well, we got a minute or a few more minutes because I'm getting attacked by bugs out here. So.
Well, okay. Well, I'm wrapping it up anyway. Mr. Sangin 564, any 11 or 12 power reactor ranges on the horizon? Why don't you make 10 the highest number? These go to 11. So you can make an 11, but it's hard. I've seen a couple of 11 and 12 power prototypes, and they've been uniformly shitty. I use the 1 to 10 because of the high quality, low power variables. I have never seen anything that's more than 1 to 10 that's worth buying. Right? It's just a practical configuration. Is it possible to do higher reactor ratio? Yeah, but there are some additional complexities. There's nothing magical about 10. It's just where they seem to have focused development on for now. That's pretty much it. So, no real other reason. All right, before Richard gets eaten alive, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you all. Thank you for participating. Thank you for listening to us ramble for 2 hours.
Hey, thank you for bringing me on. We'll do this again, though.
Absolutely, anytime, Richard. And again, if there's anything that I missed in the comments, anything that you didn't ask but want to put it in the comments, eventually I'll get to it. If you are trying to get my attention quicker, darklordofoptics.com. To ask a question there is a paywall. If it's a low paywall, if it's not worth it for you, then it's not that important, right?
And if you need to get hold of me, typically, sales at cstactical.com. My direct line is 916-628-3490. Try not to send me any nude pictures at night because it does happen, but it is what it is. Just make sure it's a good picture when you send it.
Yeah, I'm sure Richard's wife would be overjoyed to see it. Okay, all right. Nobody said don't send Richard any dick pics, and I do have to wrap up. Thank you all, and have a good night.
Hey, remember, they get them back too. That's the thing. So, all right, have a good night.